it is Matt here from Scoop in Response, and today we are looking at Jadzi Wizards, which is a deck that we have brewed up since it's been spoilt just the other day. Jadzi Oracle of Arcavios / Journey to the Oracle is a new Simic commander that has been announced with Strixhaven. It's a really awesome commander. Just when you thought Simic commanders couldn't actually get more Simic-y, in comes Quandrix, and we've got the most Simic commander that you could ever imagine. So it's an absolute beast at 8 mana to cast, but it's also got a backside that's going to help us get there. So the front side is Jadzi, Oracle of Arcavios for 6 and 2 blue. It's a 5/5 and it reads, discard a card, return Jadzi Oracle of Arcavios to its owner's hand. It also has Magecraft. Whenever you cast or copy an instant or sorcery spell, reveal the top card of your library. If it's a non-land card, you may cast it by paying 1 rather than paying its mana cost. If it's a land card, put it onto the battlefield. So absolutely busted effect, but balanced a little bit by the fact that it is a 8 mana spell. The backside reads as Journey to the Oracle. So sorcery for 2 and green. You may put any number of land cards from your hand onto the battlefield. Then if you control 8 or more lands, you may discard a card. If you do, return Journey to the Oracle to its owner's hand. So this card combined with the creature side is absolutely broken. You almost never have this card in the command zone unless it gets countered or destroyed at a time where you don't have any cards in hand. So yeah, the commander itself is absolutely ridiculous, and the way that we have brewed this is we've gone in a Wizards direction, so Wizards tribal essentially. I thought that this would be the most fun to basically take advantage of 2 wizards in particular, which is Baral, Chief of Compliance, which actually means that our instants and sorceries cost 1 less to cast, and the other one being Narumeha, which basically lets us go infinite with half of the deck in this particular build. We've got all of the typical wizards that you'd expect to see, so you've got your Snapcaster Mage, you've got your Gadwick the Wizened Spellseeker. We've got a new one with Archmage Emeritus. There we go. Good enough. Archmage Emeritus, which is just an absolutely awesome card. Cast a spell, copy an instant or sorcery spell, and you get to draw a card. So every time you cast something, every time you draw something, every time you copy something, you get to draw cards. So yeah, absolutely awesome. All of the wizards that we're playing are going to synergize very nicely with Azami, Lady of Scrolls as well. And we're going to be doing some shenanigans with the top of our deck with things like Magus of the Future and a few other effects that sort of do similar things. So the main goal of this deck is to basically ramp like crazy, ramp as hard as we can, and get Jadzi out as soon as possible, which won't be too hard when you actually see the number of sorceries and instants we have that let us ramp. Once we actually have Jadzi on the battlefield, essentially having a cost reducer like Baral means that every time we cast a spell, we can play the top card of our deck for free. So every single instant sorcery spell, cost reducer. The way that it works with the triggered effects, your Magecraft trigger goes onto the stack. You can elect to pay that non-land permanent or that non-land spell for 1, and then cost reduction applies, so you pay 0 for it. So absolutely awesome in terms of the synergy between these two. All of the wizards here basically are going to help you maximize the effects that the commander's going to enable with all of those, just pumping out spells, everything like that. So we've got Quandrix Apprentice. This is basically just another ramp card, which is really weird for a bear. It's green, blue, and bear stats. Magecraft. You may reveal a land card from among the top 3 cards in your library and put a land into your hand. So absolutely awesome for digging up all of those extra lands. Then we've got another one with Zimone, Quandrix Prodigy. So a kind of similar effect in that regard. You've got a tap effect to put a land card from your hand onto the battlefield tapped, or a 4 and tap, draw a card, or draw 2 cards if you control 8 or more lands. Of course, when we have Azami out, we only have to just tap it to get that card. So You can see all of our creatures are human wizards, with the exception of Eternal Witness and the Wandering Archaic, which is pretty awesome. Whenever an opponent casts an instant or sorcery spell, they pay 2. They may pay 2. If they don't, you may copy that spell. You may choose new targets for the copy. So obviously the synergy is right there with that. We've also got a flip side. So when we flip that, we can see Explore the Wastelands. Each player looks at the top 5 cards of their library, reveals a land card or an instant or sorcery card from among them, and puts those cards they revealed that way into their hand and the rest on the bottom of their library. So it's a land card and or an instant or sorcery. So you can't have an instant and a sorcery, but you can have a land and then one of those. So I think it's a great card. All modes for this card are absolutely awesome. So it just slotted in quite nicely. Magus of the Future. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play lands and cast spells from the top of your library. So essentially we have Magus of the Future out, we have Baral, Chief of Compliance out, and we have Jadzi out, and we can play spells off the top of our deck for free, we can play lands off the top of our deck for free, and we can basically just storm off like absolutely crazy. So the other additional, I guess, cost reducers and top card that we should be looking at here, we've got Precognition Field. You may look at the top card of your library. You may cast the top card of your library if it's an instant or sorcery card. So it's another one of those enablers. And we've also got 3, exile the top card of your library. So if you ever get stuck with too many lands on the top of your deck, Precognition Field's going to help you get rid of those. Then we've got Future Sight. Play with the top card of your library revealed. You may play the top card of your library. So exactly the same thing again. You're just looking for ways to get as many cards off the top of your library rather than playing by hand, from your hand. So if you actually look at how this would work, every time you play a spell off the top of your library, you're going to be getting a Magecraft trigger, and you will then be able to look at the next card again and determine if you want to put that land into play or if you wanted to, cast that spell. One of the other interesting things is that it puts it into play untapped. It's not in tapped, it's untapped. So it means that you can be ramping as you're storming off each time. So this might make sense as to why we've got so many 1-drop cantrips and things like that that are gonna, allow us to just churn through the deck really quickly. So as far as cantrips go, we've got Ancestral Visions, Ponder, Preordained, Serum Visions, we've got Brainstorm, we've got Opt. There's also a few bigger cantrips, so the likes of Growth Spiral, Eureka Moment, there might be a few others. Mentor's Guidance is another one. I don't mind this one. We've got lots of wizards in the deck, so it's always going to be 2 of them for what it's worth. So when you cast a spell, copy if you control a Planeswalker, Cleric, Druid, Shaman, Warlock, or Wizard. Scry 1, then draw a card. So it's basically a double opt for 3 mana. So I think that's pretty good. And you'll also get 2 triggers from Jadzi as well. Aside from cantrips, we've got so much ramp. So we've got Explore, Farseek, we've got Rampant Growth, 3 visits, we've got Cultivate, Kadama's Reach, Search for Tomorrow, Circuitous Route, however you pronounce that one. I put a single Simic Guildgate in there just because of this. I think it's not too bad to have 1 tap land in a deck like this. We're not trying to be EDH with this by any means. But yeah, that's essentially the ramp package. It's a whole lot of ramp. There shouldn't be any issues with ramping. You can do all kinds of crazy cool things. Things like Search for Tomorrow off the top, you're only paying 1 for as well, so that's absolutely great. You don't have to worry about suspend or anything like that. So we've got a lot of tutors as well. So we've got Merchant Scroll, we've got Worldly Tutor, wherever that one is. We have Crop Rotation, Mystical Tutor, a whole bunch of these tutors that are going to put things onto the top of the deck, because effectively those tutors means that we can play those cards for free if we have our engine online. In addition to those kinds of spells, we've got a few things like Temporal Fissure. It's just a storm, return target permanent to its owner's hand. Absolutely garbage in the majority of circumstances, but if you're not paying 5 for it, I think it's absolutely fantastic when you've got a counter spell war or something like that, because when it's on the top of your library, you can cast an instant speed, and then Jadzi will actually remove timing restrictions, so you don't have to worry about the fact that this is a sorcery if you're casting it off the top of your library, because it's a triggered effect that occurs at that point. For a awesome new card, Body of Research, it's 3 and 3 for green and blue. Create a 0/0 green and blue fractal creature token. put X +1/+1 counters on it, where X is the number of cards in your library. So yeah, that's a very big creature that has to be answered straight away, or you're going to be, smashing face and, one-shotting your opponents. Saheeli's Artistry is a great card in general. You can use it for a lot of different things. It's quite flexible, so create a token of a copy of a target artifact so you can increase your ramp, or you can add extra creatures to your board. But it goes infinite with Narumeha. Essentially, you cast Saheeli's Artistry, you flash in Narumeha. Narumeha copies the Saheeli's Artistry, which creates a copy of your Narumeha, which essentially just layers up infinitely until you decide to choose different targets for it. So you can get infinite number of Saheeli's Artistry triggers. You can draw your whole deck through this because of the fact that Jadzi is going to trigger every single time, and that should win you the game. Verdant Confluence, I thought this is a great card because it's one of those just value-centric cards that, if you want to brainstorm or something like that, you can essentially brainstorm this back to the right spot on the top of your deck, and then you can choose your modes accordingly. So return target permanent card from your graveyard, search your library for a basic land card, put it onto the battlefield tapped, and then shuffle, and you get to do that 3 times. So absolutely great rate if you're just ramping, but also things like returning cards from your graveyard, which may be relevant later on in the game. Verdant Mastery, it's just another straight ramp spell. You search for 4 basic land cards, reveal them. You put 2 of them onto the battlefield, and if you pay the shorter cost, so the 3 and green, you actually put 1 land in an opponent's control onto the battlefield. But because we're never casting it from hand and paying that lower cost, we want to be casting this kind of card off the top of our deck and just thinning out all of those lands from our library. Seagate Restoration, Turn Timber Symbiosis, both pretty average cards. We're not looking to cast these, but every now and again it's pretty handy to have those Myrtle dual-faced lands that we can put into play untapped if we need to. And 3 life in Commander, as we know, isn't really that big of a deal. So these were kind of gimme slots, just because extremely useful no matter what. Finally, we've got Mnemonic Deluge, which is exile target instant or sorcery card from a graveyard, copy that card 3 more times, and you can play those copies without paying their mana costs and then exile the card. So it's just a great one-shot. You're looking around for something to do. There's all kind of shenanigans that you can achieve with this. Enter the Infinite, probably one of our primary win cons. Essentially, we cast this and resolve a Thassa's Oracle afterwards, and we should win the game. Pretty difficult to lose from this point because we're going to be drawing all of the kinds of spells that are going to allow us to protect it. So Flusterstorm, even things like Narset's Reversal. So Narset's Reversal is really interesting because it's not actually countering a spell. So if someone Dovins vetoes something, or they want to stifle with a Besieju or something like that where you couldn't ordinarily counter it, having that Narset's Reversal in your hand means that you can be pretty confident that that's going to resolve most of the time. So additionally, you're going to have things like Pongify, Rapid Hybridization in your hand at this point, so you can use these cards to destroy any sort of Torpor Orb effects or anything like that. So essentially, once the Enter the Infinite resolves, you're going to have a hard time not winning at that point unless something goes horribly, horribly wrong. So we've got some additional, instants and sorceries. So between the sorceries and instants, we're actually looking at 45 cards in the deck, so absolutely huge amount of them. Most of these are pretty straightforward. It should make sense. High Tide is just a great card in this kind of deck. We've got so much blue mana, and we want to be using all of our islands to tap for double, or if we're going to copy this spell, triple or something like that. Obviously, it's really dependent on the choice, but we don't actually mind if this is just going to double once and it's just going to give us an opportunity to ramp out our commander early or something like that. Brain Freeze is probably one of our backup win conditions, or it's also used to enable a Thassa's Oracle win if our Enter the Infinite gets exiled or countered or something like that. Cyclonic Rift, just a great card. We don't mind, hard casting this to sort of, break parity in one of those board states where no one can really get the win off. Narset's Reversal we covered. Twin Cast is just another copy spell. So both Narset's Reversal and Twin Cast, because we are casting a card and we're copying a new card, we're actually getting 2 triggers from our Jadzi, which is, extra value. We've got Weather the Storm. We're going to get, you know, essentially infinite life in a lot of circumstances if we need to with Weather the Storm. It's not going to be a true infinite, obviously, because of the ability for, you know, a lot of things that are going to do infinite damage back to us, like Walking Ballista or something like that, can just go over the top. But, you know, this will put us way ahead in life in any circumstance where there is you know, no single, you know, instant infinite damage. So effectively regular combat damage is going to be irrelevant. What's really cool about Weather the Storm and Brain Freeze, storms copy the spell. So what that means is with our commander, every single copy triggers Jadzi. So we get to just, you know, if you've got a storm counter 5, you cast it, you get your 6, you get your original copy of the spell, and then the 5 copies, that's 6 triggers of Jadzi for you to put all of those lands into play, cast all of those spells, and continue to draw, you know, continue to go off more and more and more. Okay. Some of the other cool instants that we've included are Simic Vision, just a great modal dual-faced land. I like this card. I think it's fairly priced, and it's just a great card. You're never sad about either side. I think all modes work quite well. Cryptic Command. We've got a you know, an absolute staple in Modern. It's just a great card for something like this because of the modes that we can do. So we can do things like recur a Mystic Sanctuary. We can do things like, you know, return permanents to hand, tap all creatures to save ourselves, or we can draw cards if we need to. So just great card. Eureka Moment is like a big growth spiral. I love it. I think it's great. It's also hilarious that they almost look identical if you just hover over them quite quickly. Hindering Touch is a storm card, counter target spell unless controller pays 2. I just think this is just I think Flusterstorm is absolutely insane in this deck, and I think that this is good enough in this deck to just play it, even though it's a way, way worse Flusterstorm, because as I said, all of those storm counts giving you extra, you know, triggers of Jadzi, so just great. We've got Sublime Epiphany, which is Cryptic Command. Counter target spell, counter activated or triggered ability, return target non-land permanent to its owner's hand, create a token that's a copy of target creature control, or draw a card. So all kinds of weird and wonderful things. Sublime Epiphany is also very cool because you can use it to get through things like an Emrakul or was it Gaia's Blessing. So essentially, if you were to brain freeze with a storm count to kill a player, but then they have a Emrakul trigger that goes on the stack, because you can cast this at instant speed, you can have them draw a card still while their library's empty. This is just a really fringe, you know, case, but essentially it's just one of those things where, you know, there might not have been a way to win otherwise, but this is one of those cards that enables it. And any 6-drop that's going to be cast for free or for 1, just absolutely awesome. Nexus of Fate. This is, you know, pretty obvious that this is just an insane win con if you're just drawing your whole deck and then you want to take infinite turns or something like that, because you got one card on your deck after you cast Enter the Infinite, then you cast Nexus of Fate, it goes onto the top of your library, then you cast Nexus of Fate, it goes onto your library again, you just have infinite turns like that. Great card. Artifacts wise, extremely limited because we want to take advantage of the cast triggers on instants and sorceries. So we've limited the amount of, I guess, fast mana, everything like that. As I said, we're not trying to be CDH for this, so we've limited it to just the cards that I think are the most critical for this kind of deck. Mana Crypt, Soul Ring, Arcane Signet, and the last one being Primal Amulet. Instant and sorcery spells you cast cost 1 less, so it's another cost reducer. Absolutely great. Whenever you cast an instant or sorcery spell, put a charge counter and then it flips. We will just flip it. Once you flip it, add a mana, and then when you cast an instant or sorcery spell, you copy it and choose new targets. Super, super good spell. Really, really good. Leyline of Anticipation. Sometimes we are going to draw sorceries or wizards that we need to cast on someone else's turn. Leyline of Anticipation is just a great way to do that. I think it's a fantastic card in this kind of deck. Precognition Field and Future Sight we went over earlier. So that's pretty well it. The mana base is extremely, I guess, basic. I've just spotted a bit of an oversight. We will add back in a Cavern of Souls. So the crop rotation is really just to be targeting a Cavern of Souls so that you have uncounterable wizards. We've got Reliquary Tower, which I am actually a very big advocate for removing in most decks, but if we're playing a flash deck like this and we have a lot of card draw, which we really do have a lot of card draw, remembering that all of our wizards are designed to draw cards too, this is super useful for that. And you know, if it eats up a wasteland or something like that instead of your cavern, you're really happy about that. The only thing else we've got really is Ancient Tomb, a whole bunch of dual lands, and fetches and basics to go accordingly. So we want to keep it a really basic land base because of high tide and things like that, but also because some of our cards are actually really hard to cast. So, you know, it would be 3 blue here. There's a lot of 3 pip cards that actually need to be cast from this. So that's pretty well the deck. There's really a lot of things that could be changed about this. I've seen really hardcore dedicated turns lists. You could play a really, really strong control list and things like that. I tried to find a balance here for something that is going to be a high to a medium in terms of its competitiveness without having, I guess, a lot of those super expensive non-staple cards. So if you actually look at the list, you'll see that most of the money cards as such are things like Mana Crypt, you know, it's things like Spellseeker, things like Snapcaster Mage. These cards are just great cards that you're not going to have trouble putting into other decks. So I've kind of tried to find a bit of a balance. Some really obvious upgrades would include things like Intuition or a Tropical Island, something like that. Or, you know, a really comprehensive mana base that's going to be a lot more useful for ramping. So like your artifacts that are going to assist you to ramp a lot more. So your mana vaults, things like that. That's pretty well the deck. The other thing I will mention as well is I will put in the comments of the video, the description of the video, a budget version, which we managed to get down to all the way down to $270 at the time of recording. So all we did was we took out all of the fetches and the expensive lands. That's pretty much the majority of the cost in the deck. We took out the Mana Crypt because that's the most expensive card in the deck. We also removed the Snapcaster Mage and the Spellseeker and the Thassa's Oracle. So that's where the bulk of the changes sort of occur. I guess in doing that, what that means is our win conditions aren't really, you know, Thassa's Oracle centric anymore. So we need to have, I guess, something that's not just a whole bunch of ramp and then do nothing. So I've included in this the Rampaging Baloths and Scoot Swarm as, I guess, our primary win conditions. We're going to be putting a lot of lands into play so we can, you know, essentially buff these really, really quickly. And it will, you know, do really well compared to a much more complicated like Thassa's Oracle kind of combination if you're not wanting to sort of do infinity type stuff. This is a pretty light on infinite list for both versions. I just thought that with the cost reduction theme, there's no real point in going infinite as well because we're not going to have any use for that. We may as well, you know, put those card slots into improving the chances of resolving our commander or protecting it in some other way. So that's the deck. Thanks so much for looking at the video, and if you have any comments or a list or a card that you think I've missed, I'm very open to checking it out. I will be updating these lists as we move forward because we have put a lot of videos out in the last 2 weeks, and you know, mostly because half of the cards for the set haven't been revealed at the time that we've actually you know, recorded these videos. So thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.